Hi. So, talking about feedback, and I wanted to close this three-part segment with feedback you understand. And so we talked about feedback in the first video that you didn't agree with, feedback that you don't understand, which is bad feedback. And in this particular video, we want to talk about feedback you understand. Welcome to the Basics of Bossing Up. I am Allie Love, where we discuss basic principles in order to create the lives we want and ultimately deserve. Today, we're talking about feedback you understand. What do you do next? If you followed those other videos and started to really engage in dialogue around how to take feedback you don't agree with and turn it into feedback that you can implement or utilize, and the same thing with the bad feedback, the feedback you don't understand, if you can take that feedback, find clarity, and get yourself in a position where you're like, you know what, I understand it now. What do you do once you synthesize all of that feedback into a position of getting good feedback? And it's feedback you don't understand. I mean, you do understand. Good feedback is feedback you do understand. What do you do next? Sincerely, I encourage you to create a roadmap. I often talk about the 3 S's, structure plus strategy equals success. To create a roadmap for you and what that looks like. What does implementing this feedback, this solicited feedback from your employees, employers, from your partners, from your family members, what does that look like? How does that translate into actual behavior, into actual output, into revenue numbers? Whatever your goal is, how does that translate to your goal? What does that look like for you on a daily basis? For example, in feedback you don't understand, sometimes they say, you know what? One of the things that we're having is that on the team, you don't communicate as well. Often there's miscommunication. Once we are all on the same page, the team can flow well, but sometimes when you're communicating about work, about life, there seems to be a disconnect. Okay, asking for feedback, asking for clarity around that feedback helps, right? What can I do? Okay, write better emails. Email every time that you are doing a transaction. Let the team know what's next for you, kind of thing. Insight to what you're doing when it comes to your business. Purely an example. What you want to do is now on a day-to-day basis, you want to check in with yourself midday and say, have I communicated clearly this morning? At the end of the day, have I communicated thoroughly today? Have I let people, have I provided insight to what I'm offering or what I'm doing at work? Was my email, and if sometimes it's hard to write a corporate email, I know when you're first working in corporate, you don't know how to sound. Should you sound very business-like? Should you sound cool and like, what's up? Should you just say, hey, hi, how you doing? Should you check in? Should you just get back straight to the point? It can all be confusing. So sincerely ask someone on your team, hey, do you mind just taking a look at this? I'm trying to get better at how I communicate via email. How does this read to you? Maybe not someone on your team, maybe a friend. Maybe you check someone who also is at work and be like, hey, quickly, can you just look over this email? How does it translate? Start to get specific with how you position yourself to do the things that you need to do better, right? That you need to improve upon. And set in a check-in. I encourage you during your lunch break and right at the end of the day before you conclude your workday, check in and ask yourself, of those 3 to 5 points of feedback of you trying to be better at your job, did you hit those marks? And if there's still some confusion on how to physically do those things or how to embody any of those things, did you lean in and ask for advice? Did you get a second pair of eyes? Any of these things work. And the reason I say this is that sometimes when we get feedback we understand, we actually put it by the wayside and then we wonder why we didn't get promoted. We wonder why we didn't get a promotion. We wonder why we're overlooked. And so we need to speak up and say, hey, I'm working on these things. Let your team know. It's kind of like your accountability partner. When you are riding Peloton or when you're working out or when you've given up something, you tell everyone, yeah, no, I've given up that for this month, or this, I'm not doing that again. Oh no, I ride, 5 days a week. Once you start vocalizing and creating an identity for yourself, you end up, of course, being held accountable to be that person you said you were. And so the same thing happens if you are working on any of those elements or any of those things that came back through a feedback session. Make sure you continue to close that loop and give your team, your family, your partners insight to how you are implementing it every day or every week. Just again, tap into them, lean on them. You're not expected to change overnight. You're not expected to be perfect. You're not expected in 4 days to all of a sudden all the feedback, oh, that's implemented, that's changed. If you could change something very quickly, then it's not necessarily, the likelihood of it coming up in your feedback session would be very slim. This is something that you do repetitively. This is something sometimes you do unknowingly. And so it's gonna take you checking in at lunch at the end of the day to say, yo, am I doing this? Did I do this today? So set some calendar and some calendar reminders. Lunch, dinner time, or lunch post work time right before you leave. Set calendar reminders. What are your feedback loops? How do you close them? Can you check in with yourself, check in with a coworker, and make sure you're staying true? So then when you do your follow-up in 3 months or 6 months or however your meetings go, whatever your next check-in is, you can say, here's how I've improved. Here's what I've done. Here's where I was. Here's the clarity that I've received around that feedback. And here's how my day-to-day has changed. So again, feedback you understand, and you can get feedback you don't agree with, and that bad feedback you don't understand, to a place where you understand it and you can implement it. Make it a part of your structure. That's your strategy to get a promotion or promoted, which equals success. All right, y'all, that concludes our series here for feedback. I thank you for rocking with me, for commenting, for sharing the information. That's the basics of bossing up. See you later.